have with us on set from the Belize Peace Movement, two of their ranking members. We have with us Paco and we have George Myvett. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasant good morning.
Now, we're how far away from the referendum vote?
Less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months?
7 weeks, more or less.
I wanted to find out before we got into the meat of your presence here today as to what do you feel about the state of your campaign at this juncture?
You want to take that, George?
Right. Our campaign has been, I guess, twofold. Really, we have been kind of tugging along with the referendum unit in places where we are invited or where we have inserted ourselves. And we have been making our own way across the country. And I must say that the reception has been tremendous. In instances where the referendum unit and in general the yes to the ICJ proponents go, if there's an absence of the Belize Peace Movement, people are reaching out to us to basically make our presence be known. So I get a sense that really people want all sides of the story. I have a mantra that goes, if you want the truth, you have to look at the three sides, my side, your side, and the truth. And I get a sense that the Belizean populace do not want to be told yes to the ICJ. They're basically saying, we want the objective truth so that we can make an informed decision. That is the response that we have been getting.
Now, when you speak of inserting yourself or being invited along with the referendum unit, or there have been quite a few forums and presentations and debates that have been planned over the course of the past couple months. How do you feel that people have been in terms of their reception to the message that you're giving out?
Well, basically, I believe that the excuse me, the reception is quite positive. It's quite positive because, as you know, from the onset with the referendum unit's approach, it was more of, how can I say, perceived from most Belizeans, as far as I could see, more of speaking to them as opposed to incorporating them into the discussion, right? And with the advent of the BPM coming on board and bringing a fresh perspective, or a perspective that wasn't necessarily being conveyed by way of the referendum unit's platform, I find that the general response is quite receptive.
And how has the dynamics changed since the introduction of an official yes campaign?
I don't really know if it's changed per se, because, and again, it depends on who you ask. From the onset, we believe that the initial efforts of the referendum unit were indicative of a yes to begin with. But now that there is an official yes, well, let's just say that the people that are attending their sessions are getting a double dose of yes.
No.
I wanna, but before we dive any deeper, I know that there are a number of people who are resigned to their positions at this point in time. And there are quite a number of people that are undecided in this country. And what I have found through conversations with various persons, even guests here on the show, is that there is a hesitation to ask questions that are burning for them, because in attendance of a forum or a debate, it has become so divisive. One of the things that we have seen from the Yes campaign and also from the No to the ICJ campaign is a very malicious way of looking at any person who sees it other than your perspective. And I want to ask you directly, why is this done? And do you not see it as counterproductive to helping people reach a decision?
First off, why is it done? That's an individual determination. Individuals do what they do, unfortunately. As for myself, I try not to engage in that type of behavior. So I can't speak for everyone. With regards to whether or not it's beneficial, well, definitely it wouldn't be beneficial to engage in how can I put it, an antagonistic type of approach, right? So, I mean, it basically boils down to an individual's decision, whether they be part of a, excuse me, a collective or what have you. I can say on behalf of the Belize Peace Movement that it is not our modus operandi to engage in that type of dialogue. But again, I can only speak for the movement in and of itself.
But what we've seen from practice is almost a usurping sometimes of the question and answer segments, a lot of, and we can go back to our very own forum, some of the pontificating as you get up to the microphone, because your decision is made. For those who are undecided, there are burning questions that they need answers to be able to clarify what they will do from this point forward. Yeah. So when you take over and also include a dialogue that says you are essentially treasonous or unpatriotic if you choose anything else other than no, you are actually isolating those who are still trying to make this very important decision.
I don't think that you could divorce the responsive people from the content of the message. And really, from our standpoint, the content of the message needs to be objective and as factual as possible. The events that I have participated in personally, where the referendum unit has been there, including yesterday, we spoke to the NGO community, and effectively what they have said, or what they have done in terms of organization is, there's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in terms of deliveries, there's the Belize Peace Movement, and then there's the Assad Showman himself, the guru. And effectively, the MFA's presentation is just on the facts. Our presentation is on the facts and on informed opinion. And I'm saying that because although the MFA would be saying it's just the facts, in many instances it's opinion, and in some instances informed opinion. I'll give you a good example. The MFA is basically saying this is an airtight case. There's no way Belize could go to the ICJ and lose based on the information that is available to them. That is really an informed opinion, because that determination would not be made by those advising the government. If we reach the ICJ, that determination would be made by the judges at the ICJ. So I'm just making the point that certainly in terms of our narrative is we want to put the Belizean voter or potential voter in as informed a position as possible.
But it doesn't answer my specific question about how this particular narrative does isolate people who have not made their minds up as yet.
Well, it's an interesting question, and my philosophical take on it would be that if people feel isolated and they feel intimidated in terms of asking questions, there's something called problem analysis, and if that's an issue, and certainly it has crossed your radar, that is something that we would probably treat with from the standpoint of our organization. Our mantra is make it as simple as possible, because at the end of the day, you want to engage John Q. Public. We actually have a show on Plus TV Tuesdays at 8 in the night called Brock It Down, and we make a conscious decision when we do our presentations to make it as basic and as understandable as possible to John and Jane Q. Public.
Can I ask this question? Because I want to get straight to the meat of the matter. We're talking about a campaign. Whether we split it or not, and it has actually become a campaign, a political campaign. We have the PUP saying one no, we have the UDP saying one thing, we have the BPP indirectly through BPM saying one thing.
BPM.
Right? So, well, just the perception is that it is the Belize Progressive Party, along with a collaboration of other persons who are saying no as well. And you know,
even if the perception is out there, I would just like the opportunity to underscore that
that is not the BPP.
It's a conscious decision that has been made from the political realm to take this into an apolitical environment.
So, the leader of the BPP is a strong member of the BPM, one of the leading members of that organization. Am I right, Mr. Patrick Rodriguez?
I wouldn't say leading member, but it's collective. It's collective. It's
All
collective.
right. Whatever is most palatable to you. But there clearly are lines drawn. And one of the issues that we've been having in local politics is campaign financing. Who's funding you? And what strings does it come with? And so that is a primary concern with general elections. And surely for something as important than this, surely must be a big issue.
Sir.
I'm looking at the issue of, I'm seeing new players in the game. Citizens for the Defense of Sovereignty, the yes, vote yes to the ICJ, who are actually having commercials on television. Those are cheap.
Yeah.
Do you have a concern, Paco, about the issue of where these yes campaigners are getting their money from? Doesn't that have to be a question that's answered? And in doing your research, what have you found in terms of who's paying for it? Is this incest? Is it coming from the same pool? And if it's coming from the same pool, has some of that money been shared to have an equal, as you said, the three sides of the conversation, to fund a little bit of the no vote?
Well, definitely you pose a salient question, and it's something that is near and dear to our hearts because, you know, campaign financing from a political standpoint is a concern. And given that we're dealing with this issue, yes, you see that proponents on the yes side appear to have deep pockets.
Where's it coming from?
I have no idea. Unfortunately,
that's an important question to answer.
And we would love to know.
It affects credibility, you agree? Because if somebody is paying for it, if Guatemala is paying for it, for example, I'm being very facetious, and should we be concerned?
Absolutely.
Who's paying for it?
Absolutely.
Well, perhaps you're truthful and without knowing it. We don't know who's paying for this. And really actually a part of our conversation has been that a part of the monies definitely going into government coffers is grant funding. And we have said two things. If it goes into the coffers of the government of Belize, then there's a moral and legal obligation to be accountable.
Yes.
And we don't know that that is happening. And so we have written to donors, and we will be writing to the government of Belize on the issue of accountability under the mantra of good governance.
Absolutely.
We have also...
Which donors have you written into so far?
We have no donors. Actually, one of the things that...
You say we're writing to donors.
No, you said you've written to donors. You've reached out to donors for accountability.
Well, I'll just call one. The UNDP has been one of the conduits for funding.
Yeah.
And we have written to them to basically say that if we are talking about an education campaign versus a propaganda yes to the ICJ campaign, then the issue of equity becomes relevant. And in that regard, we were proposing that they engage with us so that they can understand that there are cost implications.
What if they just
ignore you? What do you mean? Did you ask them for money?
Well, we have said to them, tell us what the process is and tell us how you access funds. And essentially their response has been, well, we have done what we have done. We have committed to the government of Belize. It is the responsibility of the government of Belize to then decide what happens to those funds. And obviously, the response to us unofficially has been...
From government?
It is what it is.
From whom?
I would say unofficial response has been...
The unofficial response from whom?
Well, I'm talking about the government.
Okay.
All right, has been, you know, the government does what it does.
Wait, I got to understand this, because we're hearing government, we're hearing UNDP, and they're two separate entities.
Right.
So the money came from the Americans and the British. It was put into UNDP. That's how the money is supposed to be funneled to the government of Belize. You said you wrote to UNDP asking them essentially to help you fund the campaign.
Well,
to
asking for clarification.
How you can access funds so you can equalize the playing field and get the no perspective out as well.
Right.
And the official response from UNDP was that the money is channeled to the government and they...
it's a political policy decision and not necessarily a political party decision. And I think that that is astute. And I don't think that I would expect any different from UNDP to say what they have said.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. So I want to move past because quite frankly, and I think what Kevin mentioned is an absolutely important question about where the money is coming from. But I know it is not something that you are in the capacity to answer, and perhaps you'll take that question beyond the studio at this point. But going back to the push for the no vote, there have been quite a few strategies that you have brought forward, and the most recent that you've been aligned to is the video of the Nigerian woman saying, you know, don't go to the ICJ because it's risky. And this particular video and the way it was painted in terms of the perspective from Nigeria has been debunked in terms of its relevance to the Belize case. How do you respond to that?
Well, debunked is a strong word.
If I could, let me...
Sorry, Paco.
If I could chime in on that. Well, I'm very, very happy to hear that you spoke initially about the risk aspect. Because whenever you put something out, it is always conditional upon how people receive it, right? Now, the fundamental thing that the BPM wanted to do by way of that particular video was not to speak to the merits of the case per se, but to highlight that risk is something that cannot be discounted, right? So that was the gist of the video itself. Now, insofar as the quote-unquote debunking of it, I would expect no less from the elements that are seeking to debunk it to take it within the legal realm out of context based on our perspective. So,
how is it out of context, though?
Well, it's out of context depending on one's perspective. And I just articulated that the reason behind, or the rationale behind it, was not to address the merits of the case. It was to tell the Belizean people, as Brother George said earlier, in a very, very fundamental fashion, that irrespective of what government says, that, oh, we have an ironclad case, we cannot lose, the potential exists because there is risk involved.
Do you still align yourself with this message? Because, you know, at face value, it definitely, I think, would have met the objective of scaring people, of perhaps losing land and property, as was clearly said by the woman in the video.
Well, the objective wasn't to scare people. It was to sensitize them to the fact that risk is salient and it cannot be discounted.
But what's happened is it's actually been flipped in terms of looking at how Cameroon's case is similar to Belize's case, actually undoing what your intention was.
And as I said, I expect no less from the yes proponents to do that.
I mean, Paco, it's not just them doing it as a tactic, it's a fact.
Well, they're the ones that brought it forth with regards to that. And again, I'll reiterate, in terms of the fundamental
I don't understand
reason,
what you're saying. I'm trying, okay, if you tell me...
It has gone viral.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
it's gone viral, but it has been proven that if you were to make a comparison, Belize is Cameroon, Nigeria is Guatemala. So what this lady is saying, essentially what the Guatemalans would say.
Right, and there's value to that. But the aspect of it that we feel is a salient message, certainly for the no proponents of going to the ICJ, is that it boils down to credibility. The message going forth from this woman is, we have been told by our government that this is an ironclad airtight case. And so when we went, we were only too disappointed. She also said that you can't trust corrupt, uninformed politician to lead you down the primrose path. So in terms of salient value, for me personally, that is the value of the video. I will not get into the academics of whether or not Belize is Cameroon, and really that is what it is, or whether Guatemala is Nigeria. For me, the value is that she has said, sleep with your own eyes, be analytical, be sensible about this. This is an existential question, and you don't want to go to court to be surprised.
But can you really separate the issue? Just, I mean, how do you, I hear what you're saying. You're saying, okay, it's not about Nigeria versus Cameroon. It's about the fact that she says you can't trust your politicians. That's what I hear from you.
No, sorry guys. She said a little bit more than that. What I understood from the video, and it's a double speak I'm hearing. What I heard in the video is Belizeans, we have been in the same position in my country. Belizeans, you guys have been in our position. And that, from what you are telling me today, and from what the truth and reality of the case is
a lie.
Is a lie.
I would think that well, based on your background, your legal background, I would expect.
No, that's just common sense.
No,
that's not legal.
The common sense in this, insofar as we're concerned, is the fact that she addressed the issue of risk, and that's what I've been saying from the onset. Now, again, people have their different filters and their different lenses that they utilize to perceive things, right? And
some
again,
of us just use the filter of the truth.
Yeah, and the truth is that there's a lot of risk. The risk cannot be discounted.
But I just want to make the
Yesterday,
point.
Do you perhaps would you perhaps at this point concede that it was a failed attempt in your campaign?
No,
Absolutely
and this is
not.
what I was getting to.
Absolutely not.
This was certainly not released to deceive or to mislead. This actually came out of, there's a history to this. This came out of, my understanding, it's a Nigerian citizen, I guess Belize Nigerian living in the south, that has had this experience on the Bakassi Peninsula of being displaced. And she's saying, well, I left Nigeria, and it's like, there's this haunting of perhaps Belize losing. So this is like version 2.0 of being displaced. You see, because obviously there's a fear, am I losing you?
No, you're not losing me.
I think
there's a fear. I think you cannot separate the facts of the case.
But I'm not attempting to do so. I'm simply saying that there's a history, and that has led to a conversation on Nigeria and its experience in the ICJ. But I just want to say to you that, in your view, obviously it's a continuum of the legal aspects as well as the emotive appeal. And I'm saying to you, from my perspective, two things. We have not had a study session at the BPP on this particular BPM on this particular video. One, two. The value for me is that it is basically saying, be careful. There are certain parallels between the Nigeria experience and the Belize experience. That is the value for me.
Can I move us forward in terms of another aspect of a movement for or in favor? I don't think that's a fair thing. But another development in the discourse is really the introduction of a challenge to the compromise. And maybe somebody else did it before, but as far as I understand, one of the first persons I heard saying that this compromise is really bad business was Mr. Patrick Rogers. And I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that he was speaking in his capacity as the leader of the BPP back then.
At that time, absolutely.
Yes. Now, in addition to what he was saying politically, now there's actually legal substance and evidence that what he was saying is in fact true. We have the preparation of a lawsuit by Mr. Anthony Sylvester and Mr. Karim Musa.
And Dickie Bradley.
And Mr. Bradley, who are saying, listen, this thing has not been done properly. So before we get into the substance, even procedurally, we have certain things going on. Could you talk to us about the substance coming out of that legal challenge? And where do we stand in relation to that? And more importantly, how, if any at all, does it affect the landscape and timelines for the referendum vote?
Well, definitely, based on what I've seen in terms of the pronouncements by the attorneys, it is a salient point. With regards to the procedural aspects, my interpretation is that certain procedures were not adhered to with regards to the Constitution. And definitely, if a lawsuit, a legal motion takes place, I believe that it stands a fairly good chance with regards to, in one instance, potentially postponing the referendum. And there's another perspective out there that says that quite possibly, depending on the angle that is taken, it could also kill the referendum. But with regards to what I've seen from the three attorneys that you mentioned, definitely from a procedural standpoint, it looks as though it's promising.
Just allow me to clarify here, because it is a legal opinion, it's not a legal challenge as yet, one. But two, Dickie Bradley is part of this legal opinion, but he's also a part of the Belize Peace Movement. So I just want to ask, what is the relation that is taking place here? Karim Musa and Anthony Sylvester are PUP representatives, and Dickie Bradley has presented the no vote or the no perspective on behalf of the Belize Peace Movement on quite a few occasions. So is this an amalgamation of efforts for this legal opinion?
I would say it's not an amalgamation of efforts with regards to this particular legal opinion, but indeed, Dickie Bradley has presented on behalf of the no position.
As I understand it, though, just for clarification.
Have you been included in or advocated through Dickie Bradley in terms of getting to the point where this legal opinion has been made?
Not for that specific one. No.
So he's doing it separately from the Belize Peace Movement, that's what you're saying?
As far as I know, that particular one is separate and apart from anything that the Belize Peace Movement is contemplating.
Let me be very clear, though. There is a legal opinion,
Yes.
which is about 39 pages long and extremely
Yes.
well written by Mr. Sylvester.
Okay.
But that legal opinion, as I understand it, does not stand alone. That there is, in fact, the drafting and preparation of a claim. So it's not just a legal opinion out there. There's also, in fact, the legal opinion flows from the drafting of the claim. So this is something, because I heard someone say, I was in Orange Walk for court, and I heard somebody say that somehow that this is just for public opinion. Can you dispel that belief and actually confirm that there is an actual claim that can come and will come?
Okay, well, I have to be very guarded in the way that I respond to that because I'm not certain if I totally understand the question.
The question is that the perception is that there's only a legal opinion. A legal opinion is simply like an article.
Okay.
A claim is something that you can actually take to court.
Okay.
The question is, the opportunity is for you to confirm or deny that it's not just an article written, but that there are also moves to bring an actual claim.
Okay, well, with regards to that one specifically, I cannot speak for them.
Okay.
I cannot. I cannot comment specifically on theirs. I know that at the Belize Peace Movement, we do have intentions to
Bring a claim.
bring a claim, yes.
Okay.
Separate and apart from the legal opinion that exists currently.
Yes, I'll reiterate
Okay. I just want to be
point,
clear
yeah.
because you just said you weren't involved, so
No,
I didn't want to. I didn't want to make people believe that we're talking about the same thing
No,
here.
I'll clarify it once again. Anything that is being done by those three attorneys with regards to
Yeah.
that specific issue, I cannot speak on because BPM is not part of that.
You're working on a separate.
Separate and apart.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that I think is it was a part of the video, and I think it's absolutely important to bring up here. It's talking about how essentially the Nigerian people were unaware. They kind of heard about it. They didn't take it seriously. One of the things that we don't talk about very often in Belize is the uniqueness of our situation. And that is that in most cases, and I know I posed this question to quite a few of the persons who work within the ICJ system. And from their knowledge, there is no country or no countries that have decided to take a territorial dispute to the International Court of Justice based on a people's referendum. In other words, it was a political decision made in most cases. That changes, I think, the dynamics of the conversation because when I asked, and it was a Chilean ambassador at the time who've taken 2 cases to the ICJ, whether or not they think they would have been able to convince the people. She couldn't answer with certainty, but it would have been a very difficult position to do so because of the risk, because of the fear, because of the unknown. How much do you feel that the people who have aligned with your campaign are looking for facts? How much do you think that they are just simply don't want to be involved in anything that poses any risk of losing a stone on our streets?
You want to take that one, George, or you want me to chime in first?
Well, you go and then I'll
Okay, excuse me. Although I very seldom talk in blanket statements, I can definitively say on behalf of the individuals that I am acquainted with in the BPM that we are searching for truth. facts. We're not in the business of doing scare tactics, so to speak. Now, again, it all depends on the individual, but in a general sense, I can safely say that the BPM is a genuine effort by patriotic Belizeans who want to ensure that full disclosure is out there based on facts. Now, within those facts is the element of risk, which is a very, very key component of our platform. Because when we compare and contrast the approach that has been taken by yes proponents, or within certain respects, the referendum unit from the onset, one of the things that they've done is to say that, well, you know, just discount the risks, or they've ignored the risk. And that's one of the reasons why risk has featured so prominently with regards to our approach. But again, from a logical standpoint or a rational standpoint, I'll draw upon the session yesterday where my colleague here was presenting alongside of Assad Schumann. Excuse me. There was one point where I asked a question, and the question was directed to both of them. And I said, what salience or what premium do you put on the advent of risk when you're dealing with a situation like this? And well, again, this is my perception, but the response I got from the yes presenter didn't really answer the question that I was asking. So I just say that to underscore the fact that in terms of the BPM, the Belize Peace Movement, insofar as I can say on their behalf, we're not into the scare tactics, we're searching for truth. And insofar as the potential to go to the ICJ, again, and I'll be very honest with you, there are some in the group that somewhere down the line they may say that, well, if the parameters are set in a certain way with enough assurances, we would consider the potential to go to the ICJ.
Bobby Lopez said that the same time on the show.
Yes, and there are others who take a different stance, and you can expect that in a dynamic organization.
You know, one of the things that's important in a campaign is clarity.
Yes.
I think you spoke about simplicity.
Right.
That's one of the mantras.
Basic information.
But to me, it seems as though that there's a lot being said by the BPM. It's not a lot of clarity. And at the end of the day, when you say a lot, people get if they can't pick up the details, if you say a lot, and they can't pick up the details and can't follow the details, they get a general feeling. And the general feeling that me in particular, I can speak for myself, is that really and truly what is being drummed is a fair campaign.
Not at all.
It's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate, and I probably might not be the only one.
Right.
Now, what I wanted you guys to address in particular was the issue of alliances. It is clear that there's a singularity and a clarity with the yes proponents. Their basic thing is, listen, those people who are saying no to the ICJ, they're fear-mongering. What they're saying is just not true, and every time they put up something, I can show you in black and white that it's just simply not true. And we will take the time from different angles to just completely debunk, deconstruct, disprove, to alleviate your fears. But there's an amalgamation. We have Mr. Schumann, who came in from Cuba, where he lives, who's here working. We have whoever is the yes, vote for yes people. We have the government, we have the cabinet, all coordinating. It's a coordinated effort in the way they're doing. But yet I'm listening to the BPM and also listening to people who should be on, because if you draw a line, the BPM should be on one side, the People's United Party should be on one side. I know certain media houses like Cremandala appear to be on the no side as well. Plus TV seems to be on the no side. But I don't see a level of coordination for those persons on this side, even in terms of the legal case. You're saying that despite the fact that there has been a very solid legal opinion written and preparations being made for a claim, that the BPP seems to be independently, the BPM, sorry, my apologies, the BPM independently are preparing to bring a case separate and independent of that.
Well, let me
with the time frame that you have, don't you think that better coordination and better alliances would be more effective for the national picture?
I'm glad you brought that up. And George, if I could take this one immediately. What you've articulated is definitely your perception.
Absolutely.
And in terms of our experience in dealing with the public out there, I can safely say that the feeling that we're getting from them is not akin to what you've said. Now, with respect to the issue that you brought up with regards to and correct me if I'm wrong, the legal motion or the correct term.
The legal opinion.
The legal opinion.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the things I wanted to underscore for you is that, well, yes, on the surface, what you're saying is true. But we have to look at the intent, right? And in terms of the intent of the BPM is not to postpone the referendum, right? Instead, we would like to see it, for the lack of a better word, killed beforehand. So in terms of that, that is why what we intend to do is separate and apart from what is being done by individuals that have put together that, excuse me, that legal brief, right? So again, I understand what you're saying, but again, perception is key, but in terms of the intent with regards to that specific issue, that is why it is evolving in that fashion.
So what you're saying is you do not foresee an amalgamation of efforts between those who are pushing for a no vote?
I do not have a crystal ball, so I wouldn't go as far as saying that, but I know I can speak to what the intent is from the BPM's perspective versus what we perceive to be the intent from the other effort.
Are you unable to or unwilling to get some coordination?
No,
is it that you don't have the capacity to do it, or you have no will to do it?
No, man.
I'm glad, you don't see the need for it?
I'm glad you asked that question and didn't make a definitive statement. Yes. It's not that we're neither unable nor unwilling, right? But in terms of our perspective, we are looking at all of the different options. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said from the onset in terms of the intent. The intent of the BPM is not to delay the referendum, it's to kill it.
So your position, if I can just get some clarity here. So the PUP is saying Belizeans are not prepared. You know, there is the potential for a legal challenge on the special agreement itself. And what the BPM is saying is we do not want to take this case to the ICJ. We want to go back to negotiations.
If you were to surmise it like that, I'd say that's a fairly good assessment. If I had more time, I could articulate it to a little bit more in depth. But in a general sense...
So we said simplicity, so I do appreciate...
And certain questions can...
In a general sense, I would say yes, but it's not a full yes because I would verse it differently. That's all I'm saying.
Well, because, I mean, what other options are there? So
there are a lot of options.
We are looking at two options. Yes, no. That's it. Yes, there's a clear path as to what will happen after that. Mm-hmm. It's already been decided in the very same special agreement. If we vote no, then what? So if it's not negotiations, what else can it be? What are these other options that you're speaking of?
Well, let me weigh in here. We have basically said that there are various parts to a resolution of this referendum, which I didn't even know that was a word in Shakespeare in English. But in any event, I believe a learned leader of the free world has basically said that these juridical settlement of disputes have their limitations.
Absolutely.
And you have to look at other avenues such as a political settlement. I don't know why all people at a stage where they're saying diplomacy has failed. The diplomats have failed.
Exactly.
One example, which is a cogent example for us, the first time in a long time, I guess, Guatemala had a civilian leader, going back to the early 1990s. In 1981, leading up to 1981, Guatemala said, we do not recognize your independence. And at the crack of a whip, when there was the first civilian president, they got to, we recognize Belize's independence, and they were working on the recognition of territorial integrity.
But I'm not hearing the answer to the question. So you said a political...
There's a political solution to this.
What is a political solution?
A political solution is that we need to go back to the drawing board with Guatemala. We basically need to say, our mantra from the standpoint of the BPM is that as long as an agreement that has a potential of going to court has Belizean territory in it, that's a no-no for us.
And
if you want to go to court on the basis of perhaps rights and privileges, perhaps we would have that conversation.
So you
and
are
in the
still
Belize
open
Peace
to the
Movement.
court, and you are saying that it's not an
No,
option.
it's not a divergence of opinion. It's just
guys,
an additional
you-
perspective.
I'm only
Different
trying to get
avenues.
clarity
Guys,
here.
we're completely out of time, and this is a conversation we probably will have to pick up at another time. I think it's the time that we now have to take a break. Maybe we have a part 2 at another time. So maybe take the break now, and you guys come back closer on, and we do it there. But let's take the break now, and we come back on the second half of the break. We have Audrey Matura talking about legislation on sexual abuse in high schools. Please stay tuned.